Hi, everyone. My name is Dreeke, and I'm the CEO and founder of People Formula, a leadership and communication strategies company, as well as the retired chief of the FBI Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. Welcome to the People Formula Author and Thought Leader Spotlight, where we chat with people from all over, from every walk of life, about how they developed the skills and techniques through communication, through building trust and loyalty to overcome the skeptics, critics, and those who resist the things that they want to achieve in life. So stand by and let's get started. Welcome, everyone. Today on the People Formula podcast, I'm very excited to have with me Jack Barsky. Jack Barsky was born, raised, and educated in the former German Democratic Republic, East Germany. He started a brief career as a college professor, teaching chemistry and math at Friedrich Schiller University in Jena. His life took a sharp turn when he was recruited by the KGB for an undercover mission. After 4.5 years of training in Berlin and Moscow, he was launched on an undercover assignment into the United States. Jack created an American identity for himself and went on to become an ordinary member of American society. After a 2-year stint as a bike messenger in Manhattan, Jack entered Baruch College, graduating 3 years later with a degree in business administration. He started his professional career as a computer programmer, but soon advanced into the ranks of management and executive management. Jack unilaterally severed his relations with the KGB in 1988 and was captured by the FBI in 1997. After a lengthy debriefing process, Jack and his family were allowed to stay in the United States. Jack became a Christian in 2007 and was baptized in March 2008. He became an American citizen in 2014. In the spring of 2015, 60 Minutes ran a story on Jack's unusual life. Subsequently, he decided to retire from corporate life and concentrate on his book and public appearances. Jack has 2 adult sons in Germany, an adult son and daughter in the United States. He lives with his wife, Shauna, and their 5-year-old daughter, Trinity, in Covington, Georgia. I'm very excited because after I read this book, I was enthralled, not just because of his life as a KGB agent, but he was at the highest level. His training was exemplary, and he came from such modest and humble backgrounds, which we're going to share in this podcast with you. And the most amazing journey to me was his journey towards seeing that there's more in life than just himself. He was indoctrinated into the socialist and communist way of thinking and was an atheist. And his life's journey brought him completely on the opposite side of the thought process around the world. And we are going to cover the most important things in life that he learned, and that is building trust. Because from trust, you are able to overcome the skeptics and those who resist you in every aspect of life. So sit back and enjoy our conversation. Again, my name is Dreeke. I am the founder and CEO of People Formula, a leadership and communication strategies company, and retired chief of the FBI Counterintelligence Behavioral Analysis Program. For my entire career, my job was recruiting spies and then strategizing recruiting spies. Matter of fact, I have with me today a masterful spy, Jack Barsky, who wrote the amazing book, Deep Undercover, My Secret Life and Tangled Allegiances as a KGB Spy in America. The intriguing thing to me, as we were just talking a few minutes ago, and as I was going through the book, I was intrigued because he is an East German, and it was interesting because he grew up in such a challenging situation, and context and societal norms really make our decision-making process in life. But I don't want to get too far into it. Jack, give a little bit of background about yourself, and we'll take it from there. I have so many questions I know we're not going to get to in 40 or 45 minutes. That's why I am so appreciative of our friendship, because I want to keep talking a long time for a long while. So,
well, and you, from my end, you have a phenomenal background, because I've been forever interested in how the brain works and how humans operate, and so this is what you were doing, sort of as in the FBI. By the way, I once was given a number of psychological tests by a couple of very, very well-known psychologists. 2 days, including the ink blot thing and everything. and I still have not been able to get the results of that. It's top secret. What's in Barsky's mind? Anyway, background background was born in 1949 in a in a far eastern corner of East Germany. It was that far east that my genetic test has me only half German, half Czech, and half Polish. A quarter Czech, quarter Polish. But that what is neither here nor there. It was a very, East Germany was very run down, impoverished. It was never a stronger part of Germany. And when the Russians came in, the Soviet troops came in, they destroyed everything on the way in and then took whatever wasn't destroyed for reparations on the way out. So I was born into abject poverty. And I can remember, being poor meant having terrible things to eat, things that didn't taste well. Meat on Sunday, maybe. Then when the school food was sometimes so bad that we had little pots attached to our backpack and a spoon, because we would be fed food at lunchtime by the school. Sometimes we just threw it away. It was that bad. One thing though, I never went hungry. It was just like really, really lousy food. And I got, in one way, I got lucky because my parents were both teachers, and teachers were for early on very well treated by the communists. 1949, I was born in 49. In May, in October, the German Democratic Republic was formed. The word democratic really doesn't belong there. It should have been German Socialist Republic. It was under the leadership of a communist and a radical wing of the Communist Party. And so, but my parents, we as far as housing, we were in really good shape. I grew up in two different buildings, and we had apartments in school buildings in both cases. So it was solid. It was warm in the winter, and it was not too hot in the summer. And so that part was taken care of. And then I went to school, kindergarten, elementary school, and right from the start there was nothing but ideological brainwashing. I mean, we learned about the greatness of Karl Marx and Lenin in kindergarten, in language that little kids can understand, and it went on and on and on. So it was very smart. I mean, the communists knew that they had to raise a generation that was buying into the communist ideal, and quite frankly, our group, the ones that marched forward with me, we were mostly convinced communists, with minor exceptions, and those minor exceptions were eliminated. They were not. Like, for instance, when we went to college, university, there were some fellows who just did not buy the party line, and they were iced. They were put into the margins someplace. So when I was recruited by the KGB, I was 21 years old. I was ready to go and fight the good fight, to free the working class all over the world and build the communist paradise on earth.
Yeah, I found it really interesting, because again, if you don't really take a deeper dive in certain periods of history and how ideologies come about, you don't understand it. And so what I found really interesting in the book was that they, the communists, the Soviets equated, at least the language they used was that it was, that East Germany was anti-fascist of Hitler, and the capitalist supporters of fascism of the which was the United States. So they actually equated fascism and capitalism all in the same kind of breath. And
yeah, I tell you what, let me just chime in here.
Yeah,
They had some ammunition that was unfortunately provided partially by the United States, but also by West Germany. First of all, on our side, the communists, the Communist Party in the 30s, until Hitler took power, fought the Nazis in the streets physically. It was the only party that did that. Their leader, Ernst Thälmann, was executed in a concentration camp. Some of his fellow party members wound up in the underground or in Moscow in exile. And those guys came back and took over East Germany. So these were bona fide Nazi fighters. Erich Honecker, who was the head of East Germany for a long time, he spent time in jail in Germany before they let him out and he disappeared. So on the other side of the equation, I mean, the biggest mistake I believe the United States made was to allow the head of military intelligence under Hitler on the Eastern Front, General Reinhard Gehlen, to be free and co-opt his entire organization. The Gehlen organization then became the equivalent of the CIA in West Germany. My God, there was a Nazi at high levels of the West German government, and there was also a chancellor in West Germany, Kurt Georg Kiesinger, who also had been a member of the Nazi Party. So we had some facts that were incontrovertible, saying, well, there the Nazis are over there, and we are the Nazi fighters. To me, that was an unforced error committed by the United States. They thought that the Gehlen organization was too valuable to put in jail, and because they had all this information about the Soviet military, which would get outdated very quickly, and this was just another one of those misjudgment that the American government has committed in history, and even more recently. And I'm not going to go there.
Yeah, I mean, the best predictor of the future is always a study of history, and
you bet.
It's amazing watching world leaders. I won't zero anyone out either, but people just not taking a few minutes to at least look at history, and not even ancient history. We're talking recent history. I mean, I become an avid reader because I feel like a moron that I don't know more. I mean, that's why that's why your book isn't just a book on KGB Spy, and it's a history lesson. It's a phenomenal one. It gives just a deeper understanding of a time period that wasn't all that long ago, and I found it exceptionally intriguing. That's why to me, it's an amazing memoir of your background, as well as having my entire career was mostly against the Russians, and specifically the GRU and then the SVR. And I knew their training, I knew, tradecraft and techniques and all that. And what I was really shocked about, and I had some experience working with, undercover agents, on the opposite side, like the 10 Russian illegals. I was involved in that case with the FBI. My behavioral team was. And so I had a good semblance of understanding. But what really amazed me was they did an amazing job training you one-on-one to do that high-level tradecraft that I didn't really expect an illegal to have. I figured it would be not as in-depth as yours was, and your language training was phenomenal. I mean, you were just also an amazing sponge. The what you're able to memorize and not have any pocket litter that would get you trained, it was truly remarkable. So with that, what kind of challenge, first, I'll won't ask a two-part question because that'll get wrong. And I know you answered it in the book and you didn't really know then, but after a little more reflection, any idea from your standpoint why they wanted you? What made that KGB officer come and recruit you, at the university?
They were really looking for a Renaissance type person. There are two interviews that were given by high-level KGB officers in the it's not Department of Division. I'm just missing out, but the Section 1 that was espionage, and and they talked about the character traits they were looking for in a candidate for to become an illegal. And there was a lot of attention paid to quickness and mental ability, ability to make decisions on your own, and literally. When I looked at, I collected about 10 of those. I fit about 9. Bravery is one of them. I did not know that I was brave, but I'm telling people nowadays, and it was a recent brain flash that I had. I was a player until the moment when I had responsibility for a child. I played life. So that made me fearless and fundamentally invulnerable. I had no idea. I didn't want to think about the dangers that I was faced with. I put this all away. I was just playing life and spy. and you see, the recruitment process took over a year. So I had weekly meetings with my handler in the university town where I studied and then worked. And I guarantee you now that he watched me and he analyzed me and he probably wrote a bunch of reports and then I had 2 years one-on-one interaction with another fellow, another handler. It was never a guarantee that they would send me. I also showed them early on that I would never lie to them.
Yeah, that was good.
Okay, so because there's a couple of times where I admitted mistakes that they wouldn't have known if I hadn't told them.
Yep.
So you put this all together, and I was ideologically sound. You put this all together, I was an ideal candidate, and then we found out that I have language capabilities. So it is what it is. I was the perfect candidate. And by the way, if they had sent somebody who needs a boss to function, that person would have failed because I had to improvise a lot. As I told you, the advice that I gave was very often useless, like how to get the documentation to live and operate as an American. I was advised wrong. Choice of hotels, for instance, they gave me hotel addresses in Manhattan. They were completely not suited for who I was and how much money or how little money I had, and on and on and on. So the other thing that probably made me functional, I had an anti-authoritarian streak. So I had no problem overriding commands that made no sense.
Right.
And I got in trouble only once.
Air Italy. Air Italia.
Yeah, exactly.
the flight back to Moscow during a strike, and you said, "Screw that, I'm going home."
That's right. And the reason that I did this is because I didn't have enough background to understand that I shouldn't have done this. When they told me, I realized, yeah, sure. Now this person the name that I used, whose passport I used, the passport had become unusable because now there was a record of this person flying from Italy to Moscow. And apparently these passports, they were high quality and cost a lot of money and time to make. I didn't know that. Had I known this, I would have spent another week on vacation in Rome.
Yeah, it's funny having worked in New York for so long and known how Aeroflot is, run by Russia, and it's compromised by both the SVR and the GRU throughout all levels. All the depot packages are carried on it. So yeah, Aeroflot's the only way they can go in and out. And so you broke the rule.
I did, man. I got hammered as soon as I met my handler in Moscow. The first thing he said, "You shouldn't have done this." And this guy was not the kind of person who would be very critical. He was a yes man, but apparently he got hammered.
Right. So it's interesting. When I was reading, when I started the book off, I immediately saw what I thought was probably a big reason why you were selected and successful. And it's all the traits you brought up, which is kind of interesting too, because you came from a really, really, really humble background, which made
Yep.
you incredibly self-reliant.
Right.
You injure your foot in camp, and it's infected. You go home, and your mother says, walk to the doctor's office 20 minutes away in the middle of the night before he closes on an infected foot, and you can't get your shoes on because it's swollen so much, and the bandage.
Yeah.
This is a child that has learned to rely on himself in extreme situations, which is interesting because normally when you think of cultures, societies, everything, it's people that have the silver spoon have these opportunities, the people that have been born into privilege or something, and they made an amazingly accurate choice with you and your personality because of that background, because from that point forward, from that upbringing, everything in life was easy. I would think.
Yeah, that you're making a really good point. You add to that I had to start going to the dentist early, and in those days, teeth were drilled without Novocaine, always. So it was rough, and one other thing that really played a role. My mother, rather than when high school came up, she put me into a boarding school. So
Right.
I spent the 6 days, because Saturday was included. We went to school on Saturday. 6 days not at home, right? And so then I chose university the furthest away from my house. So I rarely ever went home because it took about a half day by train and bus to get home. So I also learned, I got used to leaving. I got used to moving around. So I had no problem going to Berlin, and I had no problem going to Moscow. I had no problem going to New York, and I had no problem moving down to Atlanta. And if somebody told me to go to Australia tomorrow, I would go. No problem.
You have the wanderlust. There's no doubt about it.
Yes, that's a good word.
So what's one of life's, earlier challenges that you've had that you think you learned the most from that made you a better person today?
Ooh, that's a question. That's a new one. When you say early, up until what age are you talking about?
Well, I know life is full of lots of challenges and humbling moments. Pick one of your, if you have a list of 3 to 4, pick one of your top ones.
Well,
Any time period.
The first one was in high school. I had to learn that I had to play by the rules, because I was considered a troublemaker. There was one other bright guy in class. We were 1 and 2, 2 and 1, but he was a well-behaved student, and I was not. I challenged teachers in the open. I asked uncomfortable questions, and I was joking around in class. So I got a severe reprimand one time in front of the entire student assembly, with a threat that if I didn't change, I would be kicked out, which would have had incredibly bad implications with regard to a possible career. I would have gone to work in a factory, blah, blah, blah. So I learned to play by the rules. I still had my own thoughts. And so that was a lesson that I had to learn. And that really helps you in your career as an agent, because you're operating in circles where they have rules that they're not yours. You need to find out what they are so you can fit in. That was a big one.
What a great challenge it must have been, especially since you were so fiercely independent,
Oh,
self-reliant, yet having to take instructions and do your deciphering, every Thursday night. That must have been just drove you up a wall. But I think the other motivation that you wrote about in that humbling moment in high school was not only the threat of being expelled, but Rosie, the girl at the time, says you better straighten up if you want me.
yeah, she helped me a little bit. Um, and she also toughened me, like, emotionally. I mean, my mother started the job, she finished it. So for the longest time, my emotions were very superficial. I had to
Yeah,
reconnect. I had to reconnect with my emotional self.
very challenging, because, from what I gathered, your parents, whether by choice or by necessity, seemed, emotionally distant, just because of the circumstances of having to make you tough in order to survive in a tough world and a tough environment, which didn't give you, necessarily, like the emotional connection you're looking for, and so, it makes it's a bit of a gap, that you then try to seek, from other people for a while until that brings things into balance.
Yeah,
That combined with your amazingly, structured scientific mind,
yeah.
it's an amazing, string of traits. So do you have any, recently, like in the past 5 years or so, any quotes that you live by or any new revelations that have made a big difference in your life?
It's maybe not in the past 5 years, but the my faith has been strengthened. As I'm living life with my eyes open, and I'm observing and I'm watching and I'm studying. The more I take in, the more I know that I'm not an accident. Okay, and I am, and the more I do that, the more I shrink to myself. So uh, there was one time, the first person who interviewed me was a correspondent from Der Spiegel in Germany, and she called me a narcissist. Uh, no, I'm the exact opposite. I have not ever taken a selfie. Uh,
I'm just laughing at that. I would not have. That's actually a term that kind of just shocked me that she used that with you as well. It's not anything I ever would have said either.
yeah, she was a little bit. So that is uh, something that I'm just like, these thoughts are with me on a daily basis. It probably also has something to do that I'm getting a little closer to the end of life than I am, than I have the distance to the beginning. One other little uh, rule in life that I tell everybody, I got two of them, and when I talk to young people, I tell young people, get out of the house, go someplace, do something. And what happened in my life, I would go places, I would go to an event, and I thought I had a reason why I'm going there. And then I met people and I said, oh my God, I'm glad I went. It happens all the time.
Yeah.
If you want to have an interesting life, you need to be active. You can't sit at home and you can't just, communicate through a screen. And lastly, this is this is what I learned operating in information technology. It's a generic statement. It goes like this: it always takes longer, and it always costs more, and it applies to everything you do.
It definitely always takes longer. It's funny you mentioned that, the way you see life with your eyes wide open now more than you did earlier. And I'm the same way. If a relationship crosses my path, I was like, that's interesting. Wonder what that's about. And you and I are a great example of that, with Eric Hunley, and I just done an interview with Jack, Schaefer, because he wrote his book, The Truth Detector. And then literally I'm at an event up at Quantico with another friend of mine. He's speaking to the military, folks that are going through a class and course. And they said, hey, do you happen to know anyone that could be a speaker for us? And I go, yes, I do. I know this great guy. I think he'd be a great fit for you. And then we all get reconnected again. So it was, I do not take these things as random chances in life. I always
Yeah.
engage fully because they're always meant to be something special and unique.
I would just one more example. Last week I was introduced to, and at this point I don't remember the name. We haven't spoken yet. We have exchanged emails to a fellow who was station chief for the CIA in 4 different countries. Mm-hmm. And the person who introduced me, you would, this is not the kind of guy that you want to stay close for a long time. But I gave him time, and I gave him, help. I helped him. I gave him some advice, and then I find out that he has a connection to that other fellow. So never ever say no when somebody says hello.
Yeah. And even, so kind of bringing it back to your success as both an undercover and post that, the 2 greatest things in the world to be as a human being, I think, that creates all these opportunities for yourself and others is kindness, generosity, and appreciation. Those 3, they go so far with everyone and everything, and it always comes back in a positive way. So
and if I can add on to that, there's a phrase that I don't like that a lot of networkers use. It's called paying forward. That is all wrong, because that means you're doing whatever you're doing in expectation you get something back.
Yes.
you help others because that's what you do.
Yeah. So I have these 3 anchors for everything in life. My 3 ends goals. The number 1 is create a good, healthy, strong relationship is the number 1 goal of every interaction. The number 2 is open, honest communication, transparency, because you cannot have that healthy without that. And my 3rd is exactly what you just said. Be an available resource for the success and prosperity of others without expectation of any reciprocity. Those are my 3 anchors, and you just said it exactly right. Paying it forward's fine if you just let go. It's not for bragging, right? It's not to, show off to someone. It's literally, if you're going to do something, generosity, it has no expectation of reciprocity, because then it's.
Now, that doesn't mean when you meet somebody who could help you with something that you're working on, you don't acknowledge this, and and you're not happy for it, and you don't use that, but you don't just screen everybody based on what they can do for you.
Absolutely. So we actually covered a few things I wanted to cover. And that one, if you want to expand it all more too, is like, what would you tell your 20 or 25-year-old self back then that you know that you might have had different advice for yourself?
Don't do it. Because what I know now, because no matter how optimistic an ending there is in my book, I still walk around with baggage. I mean, I get these wild dreams. They're loss of control dreams in the context of being a spy. So I'm arriving in a city. I don't know the name of the city. I don't know what I'm supposed to do there. I have no contact. So I'm totally lost. Or, I have no luggage and no passport. And what do I do now? Then I usually wake up. So there's baggage, and I had problems with alcohol for quite a while. Not, I was a functional drinker, but what does functional mean? I was most likely not optimally functional. So I don't do it. But people ask me, would you do it again? I said, it depends upon what I know. You ask me based on what I know now. I says, no, absolutely not.
Yeah, because you literally lived about 3 or 4 lives. Yeah, it's great. So, even as I, having lived through a few interesting things in my life and career through 9/11 and Marine Corps and Naval Academy and that type of stuff, I think a lot of people have, maybe not a lot of people, but similar type of anxiety type dreams. And looking up some of the definition of things, you think you suffer any form of PTSD from what you went through?
No, because I had the tense moments that you know about there in the book weren't life threatening.
Right.
They they were threatening, but I had enough of a thick skin to walk through them. No, PTSD, I don't believe so at all.
And that's from your, again, that tough upbringing, which made you exceptionally resilient
Yeah,
as well.
yeah,
So you spent what was it, 10 years undercover in the United States?
exactly. 10 years and but a bit of it, maybe 2 months.
Yep. And so, a lot of people want to know, so how did that all end? How did it come to an end? And so, at the time, unbeknownst to you, this guy, Matrokin,
Yeah,
volunteers to the CIA. CIA turns him away, goes to the Brits, and he actually had your name, your undercover name. And then the FBI starts their investigation, trying to figure out who Jack Barsky. Oh, and by the way, I want to ask you at the very beginning of this, and I forgot to do it. Do you prefer the name Jack Barsky or your German name?
I prefer neither. I never liked my German name. Jack Barsky is obviously stolen. I was supposed to be Henry Van Randel. I would have liked that
Right.
one. It has a nicer sound. To me, names are labels.
Right. What's your wife call you?
And the reason that the FBI and I thought I should retain the name Barsky because when the FBI caught up with me, my family, 2 children and a wife, and I were so integrated in society under that name, it would have been very, very disruptive for all of them, and including myself. So, and now this name is sort of a brand.
Right. What do your close friends call you? What's your wife call you?
Love.
That's they see, and there, that's perfect. That is the perfect name.
She does call me Jack, and it's like it's when I hear Jack from downstairs, I better get up and go down.
It's funny you talk about, and we're talking about the transition when you're under investigation by the FBI, and finally, they discover you. And I have my own flashbacks too, because I was fortunate enough when I worked in New York to resettle, defectors, people that cooperating. And I understand, they went through an amazing process trying to take your illegal documents and legalize them. And when they actually talked about bringing you across the border so they can get you, re-entering and stamp it, I've done that exact same thing where you literally
Okay.
walk across the bridge and you walk back, and so they can stamp the I-94 form. Yes.
Yeah.
So what a pain in the butt. So hands off those great agents that made that process work for you, because it's not easy working with INS to do all those things.
and it was not easy to find out how to do that. It required a liaison that I had with the FBI, who really made it a task that he had to fulfill to get me that documentation. There wasn't a whole lot of glory in it for him. He found eventually somebody at headquarters who knew how to do it, and from then on it went relatively smooth, except at the end when I applied for citizenship. They made me go through I already had a green card, okay? So they made me go through the official process. In other words, just do like everybody else does. And there was an interview, and the interviewer asked me, do you still have German citizenship? And I answered, I don't know. I wasn't prepared for that. So, and I think what he did, he put my application on the side. And for 2 years, the FBI had no idea what happened to the application.
You're bringing back so many memories. Because again, everything, going back to some of the things we've been talking about, everything in life comes down to good, healthy relationships. Bureaucracies don't solve problems; relationships do.
You're so right. Yeah.
And I had to do the same thing so many times. Matter of fact, my Jedi master that I learned from, it was his relationships that I picked up and carried the torch with, after he retired, because doing things like this for great people like you, it is a daily challenge, and there's no right way or wrong way. There's just a way, and it's through a relationship. Mm-hmm. So I guess I know the answer to this, but I'll ask it anyway. Were you relieved when the FBI finally came, pulled you over as you go through the toll gate. You know, a state trooper pulls you over, and you finally meet the FBI guy that, unbeknownst to you, had been investigating you a long time. Was it relief? Eventually, was it relief? I know it was initial fear, probably.
No, fear is a strong word. It was concern. Relieved, I was not right away, but I was worried more about my kids and my wife.
Right.
Because if I go to jail, which I had been mentally prepared for, and of course, you know, I'm an eternal optimist, and that optimism has been strengthened over time because most of the time it was justified. So I was optimistic that I would do okay in jail. So, but I was.
I have never heard anyone say that, but you know
I
what?
spent 2 years in Moscow in near isolation. The only contact I had with people were my trainers, my handlers, and other than that, I was all by myself. I knew how to be by myself, and so I figured I extended this to jail. It was probably wrong, but it doesn't matter. So I was really concerned that you know, my kids would wind up wardens of the state, and the wife who had acquired citizenship because of me sponsoring her, so it was illegal. So and so for, I'd say, 2 to 3 weeks, I when I wasn't thinking about something else, I constantly turned things over in my mind. What's going to happen? What's going to happen? What's going to happen? Until Joe Riley, the lead agent in that case, indicated that things would turn out okay. That's when the relief set in. Right. Because now all of a sudden I could plan the rest of my life, and you know, and I could finally get rid of all the lies, because I'm fundamentally wired to be honest to the bone. That's a German trait. You know, we Germans, we just like tell you the truth whether you want to hear it or not.
Coming from a German background, yes, I completely understand it. Combination, being a German background, being from the Northeast, and being an extrovert, I've never been a very good thing for this mouth in me.
But we got that in common.
No doubt.
I changed jobs in corporate 5 times, and 4 times I came in as a manager. And so the initial feedback I got, a breath of fresh air, because I told him what I saw. And then that fresh air got a bit stale, and eventually it became a stink, because I also didn't hold back criticizing the folks who thought initially that I was a breath of fresh air. So I'm not a politician.
All right.
I never was. I couldn't play the game to that extent.
Yep, no doubt. So kind of a parting question, you know, I love this kind of question, just because a lot of times people get asked things they don't really care about or want to talk about. But so what is one thing you wish you're asked more when on a podcast, or things that you think is an important item to share, if you could leave, you know, people with a lasting impression of what's important in you in your life?
Well, it is applicable to where we are in this world today. And I get this asked occasionally, what's my opinion with what's going on in the United States right now, based on the experience that I've had in life, growing up under socialism, communism, understanding how one can be drawn into this idea, and also understanding that the history of what's of every attempt that was made that could have been initially quite honest and sincere, to build a better society based on collectivism, has always wound up in dictatorships. And whoever thinks that would be different in this country is wrong.
Yep, that's why I was curious of whether you'd go there or not, but I completely agree. And I figured you would be one of those few people in the world that have actually experienced that. And I was curious what you thought about it. So thank you for sharing that.
Sure.
All right. So with that, Jack, I'm gonna conclude our first chat. Maybe we'll have a couple more because there is so much to go through. I want to thank you for writing this. I want to thank you for sharing your amazing story. And for folks listening, get that book, Deep Undercover by Jack Barsky. It is not just a spy novel. It is a book on resiliency and self-reliance and how to move forward in life when faced with so many challenges like you can't even imagine. So I think it's a great lesson in keeping optimistic. Like Jack said, the fact that he had a plan that he thought he'd do all right in prison, that's what I call supreme optimism. So anyway, keep tuning in for more. And thanks, Jack. Thanks for coming on. I really appreciate it.
You're welcome.
To find out more about Jack Barsky, you can visit jackbarsky.com, where he can share with you his insights through his blog. He's got a podcast coming out. He's a gifted speaker, and all things Jack. You can reach out to him again through jackbarsky.com. And as always, you can tune into peopleformula.com to find out more about the tools, techniques, and tradecraft around how to build great relationships, overcoming resistance, and the skeptical in life by building trust, building loyalty, and building great connections and partnerships with anyone in your life. Thanks for tuning in.